Welcome to the Osmo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Saturday with one Adam Ship My Money Sharer. Well, technically it's Friday night, but we're going to talk Saturday slate. It'll be a good one. We're going to go game by game, and thoughts and prayers out there to one Dave Locker and Lofty D's family. If you go to Twitter, you'll find out that his father passed away this week. So he has been assisting his family with those things and handling that stuff, but he should be back with us next week. In the meantime, Adam, special kudos to you for filling in double shifts and carrying the water this week.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like the least I could do to help him out.
Yes, it is. Those are just tough situations. But anyway, onward we shall move. Let's talk about the slate. We'll go game by game. There's 9 games. We are, of course, recording this on Friday night. Not all of the games have gotten underway yet, so we'll have some potential injury updates on Saturday. But that's okay because you're going to get me and Adam on Saturday as well. We're going to do a strategy show a little bit before lunchtime, is my guess. Your old pal's going to be behind the controls here, running and producing the show. So fingers crossed it works. It's a guerrilla show at this point. If I can make it work this weekend, it'll be on the slate for sure going forward. But they're giving me a sort of hidden mulligan moment here, just in case, because I'm not a text jinx or anything. And once my Wonder Twin powers combined with yours, Adam, we could be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, back-to-backs. We do have a Toronto, Brooklyn, the Knicks, Orlando, Charlotte, and Minnesota are all playing on back-to-backs. We've got a whole host of injuries and dinged-up people, so I'm just going to go through those right now. We'll keep those in the back of our mind. We'll know more after shoot-arounds tomorrow. There could be new injuries after games this evening, but this will give us a good little bit of a baseline. In the Toronto and Washington game, the news and notes is Dwight Howard is questionable with his bum issue, which is some sort of sciatic nerve running by his tailbone through his upper thigh, but it's going through the old gluteus maximus. We know that Jonas Valanciunas on Friday came off the bench. Ibaka started. We'll have to see if that's going to be a situational thing going forward. We know that DeLon Wright did not play Friday. He is highly doubtful with a groin injury for Saturday. We know that OG Anunoby did play. He's got a bit of an orbital socket issue. That would be the eye, but it looks like he's going to be a go unless he gets that bumped into tonight. In the Brooklyn and Knicks game, we have Alan Crabb, who has an ankle injury, but he did play on Friday night. We have Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who has a groin injury and is out for personal reasons. Personal reasons is he's welcoming his first son into the world, so we'll have to see if he's going to be back on Saturday. For that one, we have Shabazz. Which Shabazz is that? Probably Napier. With the hamstring injury, he's out. TJ Leaf, ankle, he's out. Orlando and Philly. We know that Bayless is going to be out for a couple of weeks. We know that Wilson Chandler is still out with his hamstring injury. Mike Muscala is still questionable. Not highly questionable, but he hasn't played yet this season. This will be the third game for Philly, so keep an eye on that. Orlando's coming in relatively clean, but they got a lot of healthy guys. Adam, it's causing some issues and consternation. We'll talk about that when we get there. Charlotte and Miami, Kaminsky, Frank the Tank, DNP. Wow. DNP coach's decision. They do have Willie Hernan-Gomez, Bismack Biyombo, and then Cody Zeller is their starter. So,
and don't forget Nick Batum at center.
Oh, that's right. Nick Batum, who claimed he had never played with that particular unit, said, well, yeah, I was out there in a pinch. We needed to do it, and we rolled with the comeback. He goes, I don't mind doing it. I hope I don't have to do it all the time, but it was kind of fun. So, yes, that was something else to read about that. Let's see here. On the other side, Miami, ton of injuries. We have Dion Waiters out with an ankle. Winslow downgraded to doubtful with his hamstring. We have Ellington downgraded to doubtful with his ankle. And we have James Johnson, who will be out with his groin. And these were all downgrades, Friday night downgrades. So I'll be shocked if they're going to play on Saturday. Detroit and Chicago, we do have Bullock had an illness, but he did practice Friday. Stanley Johnson practiced as well, but he was dealing with a bit of a toe injury On the Chicago side, we have Denzel Valentine did not practice on Friday. He had an ankle injury. And then Chris Dunn. I think it's Chris Dunn is also out for the birth of his son as well, by the way.
So, no, yeah, I didn't know why he was out. I just knew he hadn't played.
I know he is for sure. I think that's what we're on to Hollis-Jefferson's reasons. Well, if it's always life or death, and I'm not making light of that at all. And it's it's joyful or sorrowful, and it just happens for all of us. Did you know from the moment you were born, Adam, you start to die? When I learned that when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I was sad for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, thanks for ruining it for me for the next 3 weeks, you might.
I still don't like it. But anyway, just saying, it's like a morbid – don't tell an 8 or 9 year old kid that, right? That's cruel and unusual punishment. Let's see. Back to our last few. We have Karl Anthony Towns. Oh, my God, he only played 22 minutes. That's because he's only allowed 6 fouls. He did foul out in their first game. Devin Harris out with a hamstring. Harrison Barnes, highly doubtful hamstring. Phoenix, we know that DeAndre Ayton? Yes.
Yeah.
Ayton is questionable. He turned his ankle in practice. We know that Troy Daniel is most likely out, still in the concussion protocol. Isaiah Thomas out with a hip for the foreseeable future. Mo Harkless, probable with a knee. San Antonio, they're starting just – boy, that was a tough season for them already. But Brent Forbes is starting, and Jakob Poeltl is starting. But I think Poeltl played like 12 minutes. So that's a mess.
He was in foul trouble.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then last team, Lakers don't have any issues, but Houston has Joe Akui has been ruled out of Saturday already. We know that Marquise Chris has already been ruled out for Saturday. We know that Nene Hilario upgraded to questionable, and then Brandon Knight out with his knee issue, no return in the foreseeable future. Goodness, Adam, that is a lot.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be a lot of moving parts on this one.
Indeed. So that's okay, because we're just going to hit stuff at the high level. We'll quickly go game by game, just point out a few things of notes that we've seen, because Adam has been living on Popcorn Machine and looking at rotations and seeing what's been going on. So that will be helpful. And as we start to see more trends and we know what's going to happen for these podcasts, most likely we'll switch on the larger slates back to by position for anything probably over 5 games. If it's under that, we'll definitely go game by game just to give everybody a little bit more bang for their buck. But let's talk about Brooklyn and Indiana. I will turn this over to you as I'm feeling parched after talking all of that.
Yeah, so I mean, Brooklyn, it's gonna. So we don't have news on Hollis-Jefferson, right? He was ruled out late last night, but
we don't have an issue on the groin update, and then he was out for personal.
Right. Okay. So Hollis-Jefferson will have an impact on Jared Dudley's minutes, which doesn't really affect us too much because we're not going to play him. Hollis-Jefferson would also have an impact on usage and rebounding, but I expect that when he does come back, he'll only play in the mid-20s. So it's not someone that we're going to roster, and I don't think it takes minutes away from many relevant players. Caris LeVert, I think, is still one of the best players on this Brooklyn team. He has a usage rate up over 25%, including the preseason so far, and just really looks like he's taking another step forward. So I think that he's going to be my favorite play most of the time here, as well as Jared Allen. I think that you see 28 to 30 minutes from him, and it's a spot against Indiana where he should be able to do pretty well on the offensive end. So I think those two guys are the most interesting. Keeps popping pretty much every slate in my projections and any other projection models that I look at. And he keeps being popular as well. But I'm a little concerned with him because, for one, we already know that he's not going to play a ton of minutes just because Brooklyn plays a deeper rotation than a lot of teams do. But going back to the preseason this year, and it makes sense because of Caris LeVert taking on a bigger role and shooting more and having the ball in his hands more, Russell's assist percentage and his usage percentage so far have dropped pretty considerably from last season, down into the mid-20s instead of being up around 30%. And when you're already talking about someone that's going to play 28 to 30 minutes, that's pretty concerning, especially when he keeps being highly owned. So I would rather roster LeVert. I'd rather roster Jared Allen, and I'll probably look elsewhere instead of Russell until people stop rostering him.
All right, that sounds like a reasonable approach for all of this. The interesting thing is, of course, the bigs with Turner and Sabonis not playing together. That would just, I don't know why. They don't seem to mesh well, which is odd because Sabonis has been a nice find, and then they gave big money to Mr. Turner, to Mr. Miles Turner. Some know him as the odometer. Not my nickname. I'm very sad, but props to whoever came up with that one. All right, Adam, now we're on to our favorite team, the Washington Wizards. I told my little story how I adopted them after being out here in the DC area for many years. You were born out here. When did you first start to follow them? And that would be back when they were the Washington Bullets, correct?
No, well, I mean, I was never a basketball fan like I am a baseball fan. I remember when they had like Chris Webber and Rod Strickland vaguely, but the first time we really probably started watching the Wizards with any kind of regularity was when Michael Jordan came.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, that was before I moved out here, so I missed the resurgence of MJ.
Yeah, I was probably, I don't know, 10, 11.
Okay. That makes sense. I'm quite a bit older than you, youngster, so respect your elders. Speaking of elders, John Wall looks old, but he had himself a game, and it looks like the entire Wizards team is in midseason form. Adam, they got out to a nice lead against Miami. Looked like they were going to control it. Their Twitter account started talking smack. They slowly lost the lead, and then at the end of the second quarter, the third quarter, in the game, it was tied or they were losing at each point, at each juncture. They ended up losing 113 to 112 on an incredibly winnable game against a very short-handed Miami Heat team. They're in midseason form. I love it. How did you feel about their first game?
Yeah, the tip in with 2 seconds left sucked. I still don't really know how that wasn't a foul on Olynyk or someone else who tackled Otto Porter, but whatever.
Anyway, with those pleasant thoughts, what do you got here? A little bit of a battle. Do you think Kawhi Leonard will be guarding John Wall?
Wall or Beal? I don't really know which one. I would guess Beal, but not too confident there. I mean, Toronto just has so many good defenders that I don't know how much it really matters. Like it's going to be a tough spot regardless, and it's not going to be a spot that I'm really looking to target. I mean, there's 9 games on this slate. And while I think this will be a fun game to watch, I just don't really see the need to really go after it. I mean, we don't have John Wall at a price tag like we did with Kyrie yesterday, where it made him somewhat reasonable, like 8,500 for Wall in the spot. I think you can just find better plays on this slate. Bradley Beal at 6,600 would be, I guess, where I'm most Beal and Porter and Keefe, I think, would be where I'm most interested if I were to go to the Wizards, because their price tags are pretty inexpensive, but still just not a whole lot of interest there for me.
Yeah, the only guys I was kind of considering would be Jonas Valanciunas, but who knows what's going on with the whole Ibaka mess. Of course, I have my love for Kelly Oubre Jr., but there's a problem. They now have Jeff Green, which seems a little bit redundant to have those guys. I do like the depth there on the bench, but I don't really want to play either of those guys. And then we'll have to see what happens. We need someone to get dinged up, I think, before Austin Rivers is going to be a viable option.
If Howard gets ruled out, Markieff Morris becomes really interesting at 4,900 because he is much more productive when he plays center, and Toronto is a team where they can play him at the 5 for a decent amount of minutes. So at 4,900, he was playing really well in that Miami game. In that role, he just got in foul trouble like he tends to do. But that's not something that we're going to project, obviously. So if Howard's out, I think Morris at 4,900 becomes a really good play.
All right, and then my favorite from Wichita State, the shocker himself, Fred Van Elite. If we have DeLon Wright out again, you can consider him. But there's a lot of injuries, and there should be better value plays that are out there, and probably somebody who's not on a back-to-back. I think we can move on to our next game. Again, we're going to cruise through some of these where there's nothing overly exciting because we're going to have a show again on Saturday and go in depth on some other stuff. We've got Boston. We've got New York. Was there anything intriguing that you saw with regards to Boston? We know that Hayward said he's feeling a little rusty, a little tired. That's to be expected after his long layoff. But what did you think about Mr. Tatum dropping a massive 40-burger in the opening game?
He looked really good. He had a ton of usage. The issue is that he played like 28 minutes, and looking through Popcorn Machine, even if you try and maximize his minutes, he was still only going to get like 30 or 31. So now that his price tag has risen, it makes it pretty tough to get there and feel confident about it. It definitely cuts into the profit margin there. So I'm not overly interested there. If I were looking for guys from Boston in tournaments, you could go to some of the cheaper guys like Jaylen Brown, like Terry Rozier, and just hope that they're efficient in their time out there. But Boston's a team that just has so many different players that play meaningful minutes and have so many different rotations that they can go to. It makes it really hard to feel confident in their guys with no injuries.
How do you feel about Enes Kanter coming in on a back-to-back? And let's see, they played Wednesday, so they'll be on a 3-4 already.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kanter a lot. He should play around 30 minutes a game. It's still a tough matchup against Boston, and not the team that I really like to target against if I don't have to. But Kanter does have a high ceiling.
All right, that I think will do it for this game. Anything else?
No.
All right, let's look around and see some of the contests because they're all already posted on Yahoo. We've got a $5 $10,000 tournament with a $1,000 going to first. Those are fun because, wait for it, no mass multi-entry. They only allow 10 entries from each user in their contest. Those don't always fill up, so sometimes you can play with a little bit of room in them, not always overlay, meaning that they're paying out more than they're getting back because basketball is still fresh in people's mind. But the other thing that Yahoo does is they go off with each slate. Granted, it's lower dollars, but if you are a bit of a micro stakes grinder, you can get in there, get a little bit of overlay, true overlay, like 20%, like contests fill up between 75 and 85%. They only rank 12% on Yahoo. So it's kind of fun, more bang for your buck. They do have late swap. On FanDuel, we do have a $350,000, $50,000 to first 444. That would be the Saturday NBA shot. I'm guessing that's usually 150 max. Yep, you can put in 150 there if you so choose. Reminder, no late swap on FanDuel. That'll be some of the stuff we talk about on the strategy show later on Saturday. You can catch us on the Awesemo.com YouTube channel. Over on Fantasy Draft, they have a $10,000 pick and roll. That is a 13 entry max, $25 a piece. They do lock early, much like FanDuel does. Reminder, FanDuel now drops your lowest score of your players. Fantasy Draft does not, but they have some position flexibility, which makes lineup construction actually a little bit more challenging. Yes, it's easier, but some plays run very, very, very chalky, and other good plays are not at all. If you creep up a grand, you go down a grand, and you can all of a sudden lower the ownership by whomever you're picking, usually by about 25 to 30%, meaning, and that's raw percent. So if somebody's 40% owned and you go a little bit off of them, all of a sudden your guy's 15% owned. Very cool. Good way to do it. 3 guards, 3 forwards, 2 utilities. So, yep, you can play 5 of any position. And then DraftKings, of course, they've got a boatload of contests out there. Let's see. For those of you in the frugal price point, the Excellent Eights is making its mark. $425,000 prize pool, $100K to first. Got a little bit more jingle in your pocket. You can get a $40 spin move, $120,000 contest. And then the Windmill, $100K to first, $400,000 prize pool. It's $180 to enter. That would be $180 for the big boys, so $180 for you and me. Adam, would you consider taking a shot for $100K for $180?
Would I consider it? Yeah. I've been working more on max entry in like the $8 stuff.
There we are. All right, let's get back to the games here. We'll let you do a little bit of the talking. Orlando, Philadelphia, Vucevic getting a little bit overlooked. A lot of bigs there. We saw that Jonathan Isaac didn't play a ton, but he's still in the starting lineup, and they have plans for him going forward. What is your initial read for the Magic?
Vucevic scares me because it'll be interesting to see what we don't know yet what they're going to do Friday night as we record this, but in the first game that Orlando played, Vucevic was playing well offensively. It was a very close game throughout the fourth quarter, and Mo Bamba got a lot of closing minutes over him for defensive purposes. So if they're going to do that consistently, it really takes a lot of the shine off Vucevic. His price tag has dropped here down to 7,200, which is nice, but it is a tough matchup with Embiid in Philadelphia. So a tournament play only for me. Just pretty tough to feel good about him unless, Bamba stops taking his minutes.
All right. On the interesting side of things, and that's going to be the risk, but in 4 of the last 5 times he has faced Joelle Embiid, he has scored 38 DraftKings points or higher. Now, the last game he had a little bit of foul trouble or an injury. I'm not sure which, but he only played 15 minutes. Of course, that was towards the end of the year, so Orlando very well could have been tanking at that point because it was March 22nd. But in those other games, 38, 39, 39, and whoa, wait for it, 52 and a half DraftKings points. So just saying, for whatever reason, he does relatively well. I seem to remember he was a Philadelphia 76er at some point. Am I making that up, Adam?
Who was it?
Vucevic.
Oh, yeah, he was.
All right. I thought so. There we go. I like to remember why people hate each other. Yeah, not really. I don't think he was unhappy. Would you be unhappy to not be smirching Philadelphia, but to go down to and live in Orlando and make all that money?
It wouldn't be the end of the world.
Yes. Considering when he went down there, both teams were not good. Now might be a little bit of a different story. Speaking of Philly, what do you got from this side? Boy, did we see Joelle Embiid go absolutely gonzo. We know that Ben Simmons is amazing, got himself a triple-double. Markelle Fultz, a little bit of garbage time for the former University of Washington, a one-and-done player, but he did hit a three-pointer, which brought the crowd to its feet. What do you got for us from Philadelphia?
Simmons and Embiid's price tags didn't really move. Embiid jumped like $300. Simmons also increased $300. You can basically just pencil in a triple-double for Ben Simmons. It's just a matter of how many points, how many rebounds, and how many assists above 10 he gets. He's playing that well, and this isn't a spot where I expect him to really struggle. I guess it is. I mean, it's worth mentioning it could get tough depending on what lineup Orlando plays because they have length in Aaron Gordon. They have Mo Bamba, who's capable of being a very good defender, but Simmons is just kind of, he's matchup proof. We saw him destroy a Boston team that's very, very good defensively. So I'm not concerned with what Orlando might do. If anything, it's just a reason that Bamba could see more playing time. But so I like Simmons. I like Embiid a lot, obviously. JJ Redick at 4,800. I think that the way that I'm approaching Redick and Fultz is to kind of correlate my lineups, or try to at least, because I think that in games that there's more that aren't that competitive, Fultz is probably going to get more leash in the fourth quarter. In games that are competitive, I think you'll see JJ Redick get more minutes. So I think that if I have lineups where I would need the game to be competitive for it to hit its ceiling, I'd rather have Redick. Otherwise, I'll take Fultz. And then Robert Covington, the price tag finally jumped to where it's respectable. I still think 5,400 puts him in play, but it's not the, basically lock button play that he was at 4,700 against Brooklyn.
All right, let's keep on moving here. We have Detroit. We have Chicago. How old do you think Andre Drummond is?
27?
25.
Huh.
25. Did you know that he went 1 for 3 from three-point range? We did hear from Rod Beard, who did a fun show there with Chris Spags and Alex Baker, a.k.a. Osimo himself, talking about how he's trying to rally some of the other beat writers to embrace daily fantasy sports. Give him a follow. He's the Detroit beat writer. But he did mention and confirm that they are looking at having Andre Drummond shoot 3 to 4 three-pointers each game. It's going to be a new wrinkle to his game, and frankly they need it because he and Blake Griffin have so much overlap in what they like to do, particularly with facilitating the offense from the elbow. These guys are going to have to do a few other things to give themselves some other areas to operate in, but he went 32 minutes, 1 for 3 from three-point range, 3 for 4 from the charity stripe. We know that's an issue, and I buried the lead. 24 points, 20 rebounds. Adam, that's one hell of a game, and he's going against Chicago. Feels like another spot that we want to play Drummond. 9,500 price point. How are you feeling about that?
It's been tough to get to him just because the center position has been so soft in the mid-range on DraftKings. But if you can get up to him, it is a great spot. We saw Embiid absolutely wreck this team. We shouldn't expect Carter or Robin Lopez to give Drummond trouble, and he's just a really, really good player. So, yeah, I mean, if you can find the money for him, then go for it. But center is normally a position where I prefer, in tournaments at least, to go to mid-range guys because they have a lot of upside normally.
We had Blake Griffin drop 45 fantasy points. He had 6 assists, 8 boards, 9 for 11 from the line. Probably won't see that often, but I think he's someone that's going to be in the mix for 40 every night. Not really a discounted price on him at 8,600 on DraftKings. A couple other guys that got 40 points. This is on the Chicago side. We have Zach Lavine, who checks in at point guard and shooting guard, eligible, 6,900, had 45 DraftKings points in his first one. And then Bobby Portis was freed. He's at 6,300, but he dropped to 44 DraftKings points. We already know that Denzel Valentine is probably going to be a no-go. We're not sure about Chris Dunn. We saw Cam Payne just absolutely do nothing. I mean, he got some assists, but that's kind of what he does. It didn't really do anything else. I did not play him. I feel happy about that. But what are you looking at here from either side in this battle of the Eastern Conference foes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously waiting on a lot of news from Chicago. If Dunn sits, I still think Blake needs the better play, at least in tournaments, because I think he's just a better scorer than Dunn is. I mean, than Payne is. Payne's minutes may be more secure. I haven't gone back to look through what actually happened in that game. But we know Blakeney's going to play close to the same amount of minutes. He's a better scorer. And I just think a better player at a cheaper price tag. So I like Blakeney if Dunn misses. Bobby Portis has been playing absolutely phenomenal. He's still very affordable. Jabari Parker has been shooting awful, even going back to the preseason, but the price tag just keeps dropping. So I still like him in tournaments. And then Zach Lavine is just going to be an absolute usage monster this season on this team. So at 6,900, I still think there's a ton of upside for him.
Yeah, I think he's probably my favorite play at the moment here. And with all those guys below, it's going to be tough to pony up another 1,500 or another 2,800 to get up there to Griffin or Drummond. So remember, lineup construction is going to be incredibly important until things start to settle down with some of this pricing. That's why you're going to want to check out the strategy show. You're going to want to check out the live before lock over there on osmo.com. You can get that on our YouTube channel. Behind the paywall, use the promo code EARLYBIRD, just like the name of the podcast, and you get 1 free week of everything premium that gets you all of the projections for all of the sports. It gets you Osmo's rankings for his sports. He ranks them by value and production, and it's actually very useful. Plus, even better, are the Osmo proprietary ownership percentages, which I was never a super duper big believer in these. I am now. I'm understanding more and more how important it is to zig when they are zagging, that they would be the masses. And we all know in basketball what the value plays are, what the best plays are, etc. But that doesn't mean it always comes to fruition. So you need to understand how to leverage things and give yourself a path to victory. And a lot of it comes down to where the ownership is going to be. Now, a lot of times there's good chalk, you want that. A lot of times there's dicey chalk. Yeah, you're probably better off going somewhere else. We know all that. Those are the obvious ones. It's all these less than obvious plays of people that run in the 10 to 25% of popularity. It's where the leverage is. And I'm learning more and more about this. I'm having a lot of fun watching the morning shows during the week, especially with what we did with baseball with Josh and with Jake. Now Adam is on with Laffy and Josh Engelman covering things. It's been a pretty impressive thing. I think it's opened a lot of eyes. Adam, I know you've changed your approach. Are you factoring in the ownership percentages as much yet, or are you still getting the lay of the land and trying to run 150 teams?
Yeah, no, I mean, I always factor in ownership percentages, but it's nice now having something I can look at quickly instead of kind of figure it out on my own, because they are good and they update throughout the day. As we get closer to lock, they do end up being pretty much in line with, they end up being, pretty accurate and giving you a pretty good gauge of what to expect. So it definitely takes a little bit of time off of my process.
Which is always helpful, which gets you into the lineup construction and now allows you to build more teams. And it's more fun. Back to the games. We have Charlotte. We have Miami. Miami, of course, we mentioned that they are a little bit dinged up across the board. That's going to give us a little bit of opportunity. Of course, we still don't know who's going to start. And that is something that Coach Spoelstra is not afraid to change from game to game. He also is pretty good about telling us, usually within half hour, 20 minutes before lineup or before tip-off. We doesn't always telegraph it early, but we usually find out. What are you looking at for some of these discounted guys if we can get Mcgruder, if we can get Jones, etc.?
I'm going right back to the well on Derrick Jones Jr. He got in foul trouble again in that game against Washington. He played a total 23.8 minutes, but he left the game because of a foul with 4 minutes to go in the first half. So you can tack 4 minutes on there. He picked up his fourth foul with 8 minutes into the fourth. He picked up his fifth at the 6:43 mark, came out of the game, and then never came back in. There's still a lot of playing time available for Derrick Jones Jr., and I don't think people have caught on to him. He was only 4% owned on that slate the other day when he was $3,400. He's starting at power forward, which is more valuable than the wing minutes that we saw him get last year. It obviously puts him closer to the basket. It's better rebounding opportunities. But on top of that, because he only played 17 minutes the first game due to foul trouble, he fouled out in those 17 minutes. He only played 24 minutes against Washington. I think that people are going to underproject his minutes, and they're going to underproject his productivity, and it's going to make him low owned again. There's going to be a game where Derrick, hopefully, if he can stay out of foul trouble, there's going to be a game soon where Derrick Jones plays 30 minutes at power forward and is very low owned. So I'm going right back to the well here on Derrick Jones. And then Rodney Mcgruder, I expect will be very popular because he had that game last time where he played his full 36 minutes, didn't get in foul trouble, put up 40 points. So I do like Mcgruder, but I expect that his ownership will be much higher than Derrick Jones's.
All right. Of course, we have Mr. Whiteside. Who the heck is going to guard him? It's certainly not going to be Guillermo Hernan-Gomez. I don't think it's going to be Cody Zoller. Well, they will be guarding him. I do not think they will be stopping him. Whiteside is the guy who stops himself. If Coach Spoelstra does not stop him, they had a little détente, if you will, in the offseason, a powwow, a little bit of kibitzing. They seem to be on the same page for the moment. He's 6,700. Are you willing to put a little bit of trust in Hassan Whiteside on Saturday night?
Yeah, as long as he stays at this price point, there's way more reward than risk, I think. There's always going to be some concern with him, especially against a team like Charlotte that has talked about playing small, and we've already seen them go to a very, very small lineup. You can get by doing that, or if he stays on the floor, you can just be really effective against him because he's a much better rim protector than he is at actually like closing out on shooters and keeping them scoring. So he's vulnerable to that, but at this price tag, he can pay it off in 25 minutes. And then if he does, get a game where he plays 33 or 34, he should just blow it out of the water. So I do like him a lot at this price.
Moving on to our next game. We still got 4 to go. We've got Dallas. We've got Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, is playing on Friday night. Dallas gets a little bit of a breather. Let's talk about the Dallas players that made me happy on Wednesday. Okay, nobody. Let's talk about the Dallas players that disappointed me on Wednesday that I had a fair amount of going against Phoenix. That one would be DeAndre Jordan. An okay game. Didn't help. Luka Doncic, not great. Only 24 DK points. That's no good. Dennis Smith Jr., 29 DK points. That didn't really help me. JJ Barea, I'm a huge fan, but he's 34 now. He's healthy because we're coming in off the offseason. Apparently he dropped just shy of a 30-burger, Adam. And he was nowhere near my lineups. He only played 21 minutes. I don't think he's going to be anywhere near my lineups until a few people are dinged up. Remember, Yogi Ferrell is no longer with them. He got a lot of minutes in the last 2 years, but he is now with Sacramento. And then Dorian Finney-Smith, somebody you never want to play because even though his name is DFS, he never gets fantasy points. Yet he had 25 DK points in 30 minutes. That's like going to be his high water mark for the season. I don't know that I really want to go back to any of these guys against Minnesota, Adam. There are a ton of other options on this slate. Is there anybody that Coach Rick Carlisle can entice you with for the Mavericks?
Yeah, I like Luka Doncic and I like DeAndre Jordan. How much, I think, will kind of depend on what kind of value it opens up and how roster construction goes. But I think it's a spot where Jordan should be able to have some success, and he's reasonably priced. I think that Luka's good. I mean, he's looked very good. He dealt with some foul trouble against Phoenix, but he's looked good. He's still very reasonably priced. So I have no issue going to either one of those guys.
I'm sad because I had played a bunch on draft and I played a bunch of Luka Doncic, and when you only get in the mid-20s for fantasy points on draft in the six-mans, you don't get to see the green, Adam. You don't even come close to the green. You need to at least average 40 per. So that did not make me happy. On the other side, we've got Minnesota. They are playing their third game. Of course, we did mention that they are playing Friday night. We have Jimmy Butler, who is vested in doing well. I don't know, to stick it to the coach. We'll see. But for the moment, he's a happy camper. Well, he's a motivated camper. I don't know that he's ever going to be happy while he's in Minnesota, but he's only 7,700. Wow, that seems pretty good. Karl Anthony Towns, of course, had a little bit of trouble with the old fouls in that he only had 6 of them, used them all, was knocked out in 22 minutes. Don't think that's going to happen against Dallas. He is on a back-to-back. What are you looking at for the T-Wolves?
Yeah, I still like Jimmy Butler. I mean, I'm interested to see how Friday's game goes, but he just got all the usage in the world in that first game. His minutes should ramp back up to where he's playing, 36, 37 minutes. He's only 7,700 on DraftKings, so I think that that's really appealing. One thing to keep an eye on, though, is Karl Anthony Towns' price tag is down to 8,700. I think that as long as Jimmy Butler is on this team, Towns is going to be nothing but a tournament play, because we've just seen the pattern of him disappearing way too often when Butler is on the floor. But with the price tag dropping, Towns is still going to have some big games, and you want to take a chance on him when the price tag's cheap and when people are shying away. So can at least consider him. It'll be interesting to see how the game plays out on Friday night.
All right. On Saturday night, we got a game in the Pepsi Center. That, of course, is played 1 mile up from sea level. That is in Denver, for those of you that aren't getting the reference, the Mile High City. It'll be interesting to see how DeAndre Ayton handles playing in the thin air at Denver. We saw Devin Booker have an amazing fourth quarter. He dropped a 50-burger on the season, considering we didn't even know if he was going to play with that hand injury coming into the game. That was a pleasant surprise. His price is up there at 8,300. We have Nikola Yogic, and this is a phenomenal matchup for him. It'll be up-tempo. It'll be freewheeling. Not a lot of defense coming from his opponent. He's 9,500. What are you looking here at the high end of the price sheet?
Sorry, my computer froze.
Oh, that's all right. We're talking sure. Denver. We're talking the top end, Jokic, Booker, Ayton. What do you like amongst those guys?
Jokic, obviously in the spot. I mean, he's just someone that picks up so many peripheral stats. So he has monster upside. He's a triple-double threat. This should be a fast-paced game. Lots of possessions for him. So I like him a lot. The problem, obviously, is that he's priced right there with Drummond and with Embiid. I think I would rank it Embiid, Jokic, Drummond out of that group. But this it's a nice spot for Jamal Murray. He had to deal with Pat Beverly in his last game and a couple of good. But this is a totally different matchup. So I like Murray a lot. I think you can look to guys like Barton and Harris. This is really, I think, the best spot we've seen for Denver so far.
All right, 2 games to go. We got 10 o'clock games here. We've got San Antonio going up to Portland. Familiar territory there for one LaMarcus Aldridge, who spent the first 7 years of his career with Portland. On the other side, we have Yusuf Nurkic, former Denver Nugget. No way, Will Barton, former Portland Trailblazer. We got a lot of, hey, remember me going on here. We also have a relatively fast-paced game that should be on tap. This should be a fun one because so often, Adam, people do not look to the Spurs. This is an entirely different Spurs unit than we have seen in some time, and it's all going to be carried by one LaMarcus Aldridge with some help from DeMar DeRozan. Do you see some double Ds in your future on Saturday night?
I like the price tag for DeRozan at 7,200. I think that's pretty appealing. And then Aldridge, I think, is still a little bit too cheap at 8,100. So, yeah, I mean, I like both of those guys. I'm not sure roster construction-wise how like optimal of a play they are at their price points, but I do think that there is upside there. I think it'll be interesting too to see what happens with the center position. Don't forget that Pirtle got a start last game and against an active center, and he got in foul trouble. But if they are going to start him against the more active centers, then you would expect that he's going to be out there again against Nurkic. So that's something to keep in mind, that this is a game where Pirtle could potentially see some extra playing time.
So Zach Collins, they said adios to one Ed Davis, and they said, Zach, it's your show. He responded with 6 blocks. That's going to be the outlier, right?
Yeah, he looked really good though, and so I wouldn't be surprised if I think it just helps stabilize his minutes. I thought he was going to play around 20 minutes in that game, and now I feel even more confident in his playing time going forward. He's someone that he's looked good. He's been productive on a per minute. I think that his minutes are becoming more solidified here as the backup center behind Jusuf Nurkic. So at 3,800, it's not a great value play, but it's not the worst either. I think it's a little bit too cheap of a price tag. If other value doesn't open up, then you can certainly look there.
All right. And then if you feel lucky, Punk, well, if you do, Nick Stauskas, the guy known as Sas Castillo, is back on the West Coast. He is playing for Portland, 7 of 11 in 27 minutes. The 27 minutes is key. He doesn't do much besides score, but he did hit 5 of 8 from three-point range, and he's still relatively cheap. That 2-game late slate will be a fun one. You can utilize him, maybe a Marco Bellinelli. Last game of the night, Adam, we've got Houston and we've got the Lakers. LeBron somehow didn't win. He's 10,700. How much LeBron is too much LeBron on DraftKings Saturday?
I'm kind of torn on him.
Who's going to guard him? Is it Tucker?
Yeah. Yeah, it should be Tucker. And they have Enes also. So they have guys that can not stop him, but they have capable defenders. But their defense has kind of looked not great without Trevor Ariza, without Mbah Moute. So it's not a matchup thing. It's just that we saw LeBron kind of defer a little bit in that game against Portland. I'm not factoring that in too much because I still think that this price tag is lower than we'll see him at as the season goes on. So I still think he's a good play. It's just that I'm a little bit hesitant, and I think that there might be a little bit more value in saving some money going to like Brandon Ingram, who I think is going to be very, very productive this season. I think at 6,300, it's a really good spot for Ingram. I think that JaVale McGee is still too cheap for his upside. Josh Hart is another value play here. So I think that this is a game where I'm going to want a lot of pieces from it, but saving some Lakers side might be a good approach.
All right. That is going to do it for us. Good God, we went for almost an hour, but that's okay. We have a lot of games. Once again, as we get into the season and we learn the trends like the back of our hands, we'll probably go position by position on these slates. That'll run the podcast around 35 minutes or so, and it'll be just long enough for you to run out there to Home Depot or the grocery store or get a leg up on your honey-do list on Saturday mornings. You will get that from Adam and myself, courtesy of Awesemo.com. And then, of course, you're going to have a strategy show around lunchtimes when you can tune in to that. That'll be Adam and myself. We'll be breaking down the slate a little further. We'll have a lot more information, and we'll start to do some lineup construction and other strategies because guess what? We're going to kick back, watch these late games, think about stuff, look at pricing, make some lineups, and have a good time. And we will be ready to battle tomorrow, Adam. It'll be a battle of wits. So you make sure you drink your coffee. I will be double fisting the Diet Pepsis, and we will bring the knowledge. How does that sound to you?
Sounds good. Looking forward to another busy day of basketball content.
Indeed. Well, next week I think your respite is there. It's coming. It's coming, not to fear. All right, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. You can follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You can get to Awesemo at Awesemo_com. That would be Awesemo.com. But instead of the dot, it's an underscore because Twitter, you don't have dots. And I am at EMACDFS. With that, gamers, good luck.